hi there, folks. Very good morning or good afternoon from wherever you're joining us from today. Welcome to another Thin Scale live webinar session. Today's session is a little bit different. We have a very special guest with us that I'm very excited to have on board. It's David Neal from BPO Solutions. David, thank you very much for joining me today for today's session.
My pleasure, and it's great to be called a special guest. I think that's the first time I've ever been called that before.
So David and I met back in May, the CX Outsourcers event in Munich. So David had either, I don't know whether it was a pleasure or not, to sit beside me for a few days, and we connected and shared a lot of stories. And really the foundations of our conversations came down to trust and transparency in the BPO space, because being on different sides of it, and when we get into what David's doing with BPO Solutions, you'll see how that comes into play. And having done that, now got our own partnerships underway, I thought today's conversation on trust and transparency was a really good one for our listeners today. So David, maybe to start us off, for those that don't know about BPO Solutions, tell us about you guys and what makes you different to partner with than others.
Great, thank you. So it's a relatively new enterprise, as you know. We launched at the event that we were sat next to each other for in Munich. And it's a relatively new concept into a very established market of BPO. So historically, people have chosen partners by meeting at conferences like ourselves, or maybe the internet, or maybe there's a sales rep that's involved, or a broker. And really, they were making partnership choices through applying trust, or ultimately trusting in what the BPO was selling them. And it came to mind to say, you don't really make any of a purchasing decision of any kind of magnitude that way, or partnership decision in any kind of way based on sold as seen. So the new business, I guess, or the new enterprise is helping clients and BPOs partner with a true understanding of the offering that's been independently validated. So we've launched the world's first ever BPO accreditation, which gives clients confidence when they see that accreditation mark that this BPO has been independently validated on what they're presenting is true.
And I know from our conversations as well, just learning a little bit about yourself and your background, you've been on both sides of this, right? So you've been on the BPO side yourself, working and on the customer side, where you actually were looking at the BPOs and partnering with them. So why do you think an accreditation like this is so important?
Yeah, and I think it born, I guess, from the experience that I had on the client side, where I would often partner with a BPO with promises on the way in, and then only discover once I partnered with them that what the reality was that they had presented to me wasn't quite factually true. So whether or not that was, certifications that perhaps weren't out of date, or experience which wasn't quite reflective, there wasn't any industry benchmark or go-to industry body that could certify what was being presented as true. So part of that, and I guess the experience of then coming on the other side of the curtain and presenting a solution sell to clients, was the understanding to say there's a gap here in the market to allow clients, I guess, take confidence back to the boardroom to say, I'm choosing this partner, and the reasons why I'm choosing this partner are X, Y, and Z. And I can take confidence that someone that's been on our side as a client and on the BPO side, as they know what to look out for, and they've independently assessed and signed that off. So that's really the origin of the accreditation, was my experience both on the client and on the BPO side, and seeing that gap that didn't exist.
Very good.
And I suppose for yourself, the interest that you formed in the accreditation, you immediately gravitated, I guess, to the trust and transparency piece that you spoke about there.
Yeah.
As someone in the industry that's supporting BPOs and clients alike, what's your view of the accreditation need in the industry?
Sure. And thank you for asking, because I think, when I heard about it, in some ways it was like, why has nobody done this before? Because it makes so much sense. I think for us, we see so much on either side. So we partner with, the world's top BPOs and many others, plus then a lot of large enterprises too. And what happens is in some cases, not all, certainly not taking anything in some of those on the enterprise side will come to us and say, we want to look at this from a security perspective because we don't trust our BPO partners. Alarm bells go off because there's so many amazing BPO partners out there that worries me for the industry. And then the other side is some BPOs will come to us and say, we've signed this new customer. We've told them that we're completely secure and we have everything locked down, but we actually just need you and we need you now. So everything is done out of panic and a distrust. And that's not, the general consensus in the world of BPO can be like that, but there's actually so many strong BPO partners out there, and ones that I would recommend and have recommended to others in enterprise organizations to look at, that it just is a really, it's not really a need, it's not a nice to have, it's a need to have in terms of going, what we are saying is, I think because of the bad experience that both you and I have witnessed, that then becomes the norm where it's in fact actually not the norm.
Yeah, and I think that's the shame, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
it's I'll get some clients that say to me, "I've outsourced before, I'll never do it again." And my response back is, "I've been to bad restaurants before. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to go to a restaurant again."
Yeah.
So it's ensuring that wherever possible, we can give clients confidence that actually, to your point, there's a lot of BPOs out there that are presenting what their capabilities are factually and true.
Yeah.
But equally, there's bad actors that unfortunately give BPO a bad name, and it's ensuring that the clients have a clear sign, I guess, of where to go and trusted partners.
Yeah, for sure. And talk to me, David, maybe a little bit about the trust and transparency piece, and is our main focus today. In these business relationships, why is it so important?
Yeah, I think it's what's at risk. So it's not just a client, it's not just a customer, it's a share price, it's a brand reputation, it's potentially someone's job, it's the profitability of that business. It's a
Yeah.
partnership choice, and it's not a quick fix to unwind if it goes wrong. So
Yeah.
having the surety to say, actually, when I'm entrusting you with my most valuable asset, which is our customers or our brand, can we really take at face value what it is that you're presenting is correct? And I think that for people that have outsourced for a while, they've recognised that actually probably trust and transparency is now the cornerstone of, or the starting point of, what they're looking for, rather than a nice to have. And I think that there's still a piece in the industry on the BPO side where a lot of people sell on price and capability. So they'll say, we're the best and we can save you money. When in reality, that's almost secondary. It should be, you can trust us and we're transparent in the way that we'll engage and look after your clients or your brand. And by the way, we can hopefully save you some money, and we're really good at it. So it's kind of understanding that from a client perspective, trust and transparency is boiling up to be the number one issue of what they're looking for. They'd rather save 20% and be sure that what they're buying is factually true, rather than save 30% and take a risk, because the cost is far greater than what they could save potentially on an arbitrary rate.
For sure. For sure.
And the same to you. What are you finding with your client conversations?
Yeah, I think like trust and transparency in any business relationship is so important, right? Whether it's people that work for you on the daily basis, whether it's your colleagues, your counterparts, trust and transparency is the core to everything, because it's ultimately your brand that you're carrying, and also the business brand, as you said yourself, David. But what I've seen, particularly in industry itself, is very much around that. I see a lot of particularly in the big players in the BPO, everybody talks customer service. We have the best customer service. We have the best service, 5 stars. But does customer service not also come down to then you ethnically being correct in terms of what you're saying? So what you're marketing, then your service should be true to that, because that's the service that you're doing to not only your customers, but also then to your staff and to your brand and to yourself. So if you want to be true to yourself, you have to be true and transparent in what you're saying. And I've had, really good conversations even with some end clients of BPOs where they've said to me, like, we have been engaged in this BPO, and they didn't have their pillar, particularly whenever it comes to the cybersecurity space that we're in, but they were honest about it. And we said, look, we'll work with you on else that you've said is true, and you've been transparent about it. So therefore it actually warms them up and creates then a better working relationship as well. So I think when you lead, you can always, if the deal doesn't go ahead or you lose something for it, you can only say, well, I've been true to myself, I've been true to my brand. If something happens down the road and you've said that something is true that is not correct, and I've seen it, particularly when it comes to we're completely secure and we've branded ourselves that way, and then a ransomware attack happens or something crazy happens and you haven't got something on the endpoint such as ThinScale, that's where I've had phone calls come to us in panic. And then what happens is you then taint your relationship with that particular customer. And then word of mouth marketing, which is, let's be honest, the biggest form of marketing, it's ill against your brand. So I think that those things are important to kind of highlight from my perspective, David.
Yeah. And I think it's refreshing. I was having a conversation last week with a BPO, and it was about potential client match, and they said we're not the right person for them. We don't have that experience, and so if they're willing to go into a relationship with teachers, we can demonstrate that we'll try our very best to get there, and we can show similar kind of. But if they're looking for this, but then that's not us. And I thought that's incredibly refreshing, because most BPOs, as we know, would say, yes, absolutely, we can do it, and we're the best, and whatever. And I thought that's a great way to go into the view of a partnership, is that transparency. Because to your point, it might not be important to the client. The client might say, actually, cybersecurity, we've got huge teams of investment on our side, and we're completely confident that we've got it covered. So the fact that you haven't, that's not part of our RFP decision making, and we're fine. You don't need to necessarily pretend that you're all things to all people if you're not.
Sure. Yeah. And I think for being in the sales world as well, I think that the best sales come from the people that can actually say no, so that they know what's right. Because again, that feeds your brand, and you say, oh well, we spoke to them and they were saying, oh well, actually not, that's not what we do, but here's what we do. Recommendations can come off those things too. I've seen it happen even in our own business too. So that's quite interesting in itself. I think so. Maybe a question for you would be, having been in the industry in depth and then speaking to BPO partners, what practical steps can BPOs take to demonstrate transparency from day one? Customer, and can you share some examples that you've witnessed of that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased, so I'll say become accredited, and therefore you can demonstrate to your clients at face value that you're an accredited member. But I think outside of that, open references, to your point, word of mouth is very important. So I think that you'll see sometimes on websites or on sales collateral, it will be a quote from a particular client, and that might be a client that is in a particularly good space because they've done a particularly good job, but they might have another 10 clients that necessarily aren't open to that conversation. So I think the full transparent open reference book to say, look, these are our clients and please speak to them and ask them what you like, I think goes a long way. I think outside of that, and I've had it before when I was on the client side with a BPO in Ireland actually. And when I arrived, they said, look, we're going to take you on a tour at any time, at any function. Please stop and ask whatever question that you like. And I thought that was great transparency because I wasn't being guided to particular stop points to talk about a particular thing. So I think there's a number of pointers that you can go to just to say, look, if you're going into partnership with us, our business becomes your business, and ultimately we're an extension of your team. It is a partnership. It's the same as hiring someone ultimately to form part of your team as an employee. Having that ability to demonstrate to a client to say, look, here are various different touch points, whether or not that be existing clients, whether or not that the people in the organization, please talk to them openly and no script. Just find out what you want to find out and take comfort in it. I think that is a great practice for BPOs to adopt.
For sure.
Have you felt the same?
Yeah, I mean, I even find like even in our own organization, if somebody asks me for a referral, I don't join those calls. I say like connect, talk about it, talk about the good, the bad, the different, the challenges, because all those things will come transparent whenever somebody's on board. And it's the same principle in any business, much like the BPO space, that if you be open about those things, then all the cracks will form. Nobody, I've not witnessed any single BPO nor any single organization that is 100% perfect, and every BPO understands that. So to try and brand yourself and portray that sometimes, they're smart. They'll read through the cracks and they'll see. So I can be transparent and open and honest about some challenges, or like speak to our people, speak to our staff, speak to our agents, speak to other customers of ours, and connect the dots there. So I think that's really, really good and really strong. And I've seen it happening too. I hate as well being in visiting sites where you go and you just feel like you're brought into the one room and you're only allowed to speak to the one person. There's something a little bit distasteful in that, in my opinion.
And what about cybersecurity specifically? Do you find that you're a reference point for many end clients where they come to you and say, look, we're utilizing FinScale, please talk to them, and they can give you an honest assessment as a third party as to whether or not we're truly secure? Do you find you get a lot of those references?
We do a lot. I mean, we're very heavily known in the industry. As idea of it as being particularly on the BYOD side, but also now coming up more so on the corporate side. I think a lot of people over the years, it went from, oh, you need to do this because of COVID. And then when work at home became more of the norm, people were looking at it a little bit further. But then whenever there's news articles breaking every other week around malware attacks, failure of BitLocker encryption, all those things that you see out there, and the world becomes pretty scary. And even to highlight a large one in the United Kingdom, Marks and Spencer's, massive, massive cyber, cost that company millions, and they only got their website back up and running last week. Now, I think that's a very, very scary place to be in the world, but it doesn't have to be scary. I think people look at, this is terrifying, but if you don't do something about it, if you're not proactive, and you're not thinking about everything, then it can become scary. So taking that leap of faith and even just picking up the phone to someone like, or another cybersecurity partner, or in fact a customer of ours, to help understand the experience, certainly will help ease that pain, because I've seen it on the other side, unfortunately, where things are a little too late, and then before you know it, you're on the news. And we see it a lot. But I think that the main thing that a lot of folks forget when it comes to security is your most vulnerable place is your endpoints. And people often think about it as the agents, but it's not. It's more, malicious agents, and that's not the case. It's more so, well, what about the vulnerable folks, that might not be fully competent from an IT, which is okay, but it's your duty of care to make sure that they're protected from a cybersecurity threat. So if there is a screen scrape or something like that, that it is completely, only way of doing that is putting something like ThinScale on those particular endpoints as well. So I think it's certainly creeping up in terms of gap. It's certainly coming more to light. Even at the event that we were at, David, I think it was the number one answer in terms of what's keeping people up at night from reports. But that comes out a lot, and that's repeatable. But everything that we see, the majority of what we see is reactive. I'm trying to get it into a world where things are more proactive, so it doesn't keep focus up at night as well.
And it's interesting because that survey, it's been in the top 3, I think, for the last however many years, right? It's continuously there.
Yeah.
As much as price and all the other things that people necessarily want to talk about. But that survey is the client, is the end user that is saying it's important. Do you think if there was a replicate study for BPOs that it would equally be in the top 1 or the top 3, or do you think that for them, and being careful how I've framed this. Is it almost like insurance, holiday insurance, where you think it's okay, I'm going to be fine, and then it's only when your bag goes missing that you think, oh, actually, maybe we should have given that more time and attention. Do you see? Is it a similar priority as a BPO, or is there a bit of a hope to say, actually, we'll hope it just won't happen to us?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I certainly think that depending on the BPO, they're not all the same, and that goes for I've witnessed some of the smallest BPOs being amazing, and they would have passed your accreditation. Witness some of the larger ones that questionably may or may not pass your accreditation when it comes to those things. And I think it's just that the world of cyber is ever changing, and it's certainly at the forefront of the end client's mind. I'm not saying that it's not at the forefront of the BPO mind, but I think when you're in a world of particularly small market, everything is about cutting those costs. And sometimes when you're putting extra layers in terms of your endpoint stack, your IT stack, those things feel like, okay, well, whatever we don't absolutely need, we'll just not have, and we'll be fine. But they don't think of the long-term effects of that. So everything's short-term in terms of what they might need. And then before you know it, you've grown your business, and you now have went from 100 agents to 1,000 agents over the space of the past year. They are using their own machines. There's remote machines out everywhere, even corporate machines too, and they're all unsecure, they're unmanaged. And you're saying that you're secure, and then before you know it, you're processing highly sensitive data. It could be credit card information, and before you know it, then malware injection comes in and data loss happens. So with us, it's all about making sure things like data loss prevention comes into play with those things. So I think that if it's not on the BPO radar and not in the top three, I would hope that those listening to this call certainly do put it on their radar. But your clients are thinking and saying, stating for the past 3-4 years, as you and I have both seen with that survey, that it's in the top three, your values and your objectives should certainly align to your clients. So
Do
I
you
think,
feel,
yep.
so I was just going to say, do you find that because a lot of BPOs, I guess, will have different growth strategies, so they'll want to grow into particular geographies, or they'll want to grow into particular sectors, or particular service lines. So some of the
Yeah,
conversations I have with BPOs, they'll say, okay, we're US reliant, we need to venture into the UK, or we're too much
yeah,
utility specific, we want to go into financial services. Do you find
sure.
that there's particular sectors or particular geographies or particular service lines that benefit far more, I guess, from being more cyber aware or cyber security aware than others?
I mean, look, it's everywhere, no matter who you talk to. But I think anywhere where it's highly sensitive information that you're processing. So when it comes to things like from a compliance perspective, anything like PCI DSS compliance, so in the financial industry, also plays a massive part in retailers. So if there's customer service agents that are processing credit card information for return purposes or credit or whatever they may be doing, and then you've everything scaling then towards HIPAA compliance too. So in healthcare world, particularly in the United States, we see that happening a lot too. So I think anywhere where there's a lot of has into play, legal world as well, and we are starting to see creep up quite a lot too, in terms of making sure you're hitting compliance. So I think when compliance, if you're thinking about what type of questions to be asked and what's important to your customer, are you asking those questions to your customer? Are you understanding those particular industries? Then what type of compliance is important to them? And then think about what type of data your agents will actually be processing, because whilst I encourage endpoint security for any organization, because you don't know what could be accessed and what could be screen scraped, whenever it comes to particularly sensitive, that's where you are most vulnerable and where you're most likely to be attacked. And if you don't have something on those endpoints, it could end up in one of those scary situations, unfortunately.
And how about I was on a webinar a few weeks ago where we were talking about AI, which I don't think you can get away with any conversation now about AI coming into
Right.
at some point. One of the risks that I talked about that I don't think necessarily is thought through is that the rush to be able to demonstrate AI capabilities or tools that seem very attractive to introduce in your organization.
Yeah.
How do people become educated around the risks of those? So the example that I used on the call was that I now seem to join an awful lot of calls where there are AI note takers involved.
Yeah.
I was in one the other week. There was more note takers than there were people, and it seemed quite strange to me to say. Ordinarily, when
Yeah.
you invite someone into the boardroom for a discussion, you normally wouldn't open it up to your entire organization to come in and listen. You're quite selective in terms of who's in the room and the things that are discussed. And the challenge, I guess, or the question I posed was to say, where does the data for the AI note takers go? How is that? How can you give confidence that in an hour's meeting and conversation that all you might be talking about people, you might be talking about a business, you might be talking about sensitive information. I'm using that as an example. How do companies become, in this rush of utilizing AI, be confident that they can be secure in the way that they're
Yeah.
operating?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think no matter where AI is, David, there's always going to be human intervention. And I think that's whether we like it or not. And I think there's a lot of pitches that go on, and it's saying that, particularly in the world of CX, going, oh well, you'll have a bot and it's going to be like for like two. You and I both know that that's not the case, right? And to even have an AI bot maybe do part of it, there's always going to be some form of human intervention. I mean, I've had nightmare scenarios, and I'm sure many people listening have, where you have a problem and you're a frustrated client, and you're talking to a robot and you're going, can I speak to a human? And they're saying that it is a human and it's not. And you go through so many rigmaroles, and eventually a human does come into play on it. So I think whenever it comes to those things, when it comes to security, you got to think about where you're putting these bots, how you're using them as well. And then also making sure that whenever human intervention comes into play, which it inevitably always will, in my opinion, certainly in this space, that you're protecting those agents as well, so that if the bot is carrying something, that it's not going then into your endpoints as well. So I hope that answers your question. But I think like it's an ever evolving world. We're all still learning about it, right? It's all the buzz. It's no matter who you speak to, where you go, in any different industry, AI is coming up, but security implications of that are still probably being discovered, probably worked on as well. But that is the world of cybersecurity. It's ever evolving. I think, looking at our technology developments over the past, God, 10, 12 years, it's certainly night and day in terms of what we've done and then worked with BP and end clients in terms of making things more secure. And where the likes of a VDI before would have been seen as the go-to security tool for work at home, it's no longer enough. And that's just because things are getting smarter in the cybersecurity world. So I think those things will ultimately bring challenges, but then bring new solutions as well with it.
And are you seeing? I'm going to use the analogy of someone trying to steal a car. A coat hanger used to be able to. I'm showing my age. Be able to lift up as car security's got better. I guess thieves will adapt and criminality will adapt. And I guess we'll see the same pan out in AI introduction. Is that there needs to be investment in the understanding of okay, with this new technology, you might think it gives you safeguards, but equally there'll be risk associated too.
Yeah, I think when you bring any new form of technology into play, there's inevitably going to be risks with it as things develop and things get better, and certainly more intuitive on those perspectives, more risk will only be added to it. So I think that then poses questions in terms of the cybersecurity world, but then also will open up greater solutions, to make sure that we counteract with those things as well. So I think from my perspective, it would be interesting to hear from yourself, David. You know, we've started kind of veering off into the cybersecurity realm, but you
Yes.
know, you decided to, you know, partner with ourselves too, which hands. What made you partner with us, and why do you feel that cybersecurity and having a partner in that space is so important?
Well, I think first and foremost, our values aligned. You know, and I
Yeah,
think that 2 days at a conference side by side, you know, when we could hear the different speakers bring up different topics and us be able to exchange views about it, I guess there was a natural synergy that our outlook and what we're trying to achieve as our organisations, you know, align very, very nicely. So that was absolutely imperative for me. The second part is that cybersecurity is exceptionally complex and specialist. And as much as I know at high level what's required, you can get yourself into some serious trouble pretty quickly by knowing a little bit about a lot. And so it's important to me, I guess, that I have FinScale as a network partner. So when the needs arise and I'm talking to BPOs around cybersecurity, that I'm not trying to answer questions that I don't specifically know the answer to. I can give some high level guidance, but then it's important that I can bring you into the conversation to provide the detailed solution that's required. So it was a gap, I guess, that was needed in my organisation, and it's one that I could see that you would fulfil. And as I say, the value piece was incredibly important to me.
yeah, very good. So I'm conscious of time. If there's any questions as well, guys, feel free to put them in the chat, because I think Dave, so we could probably go on and on to, as we discovered in those 2 days in Munich and also in Dublin as well when we met for a coffee. I suppose just wrapping up, David, with the last few minutes, is there anything that you would audience to take away? Is what are the top 3 things that you would like them to take away from today's session with GBPO?
Yes, I think if anyone is interested in the world's first BPO accreditation, please reach out and get in touch. It's there, I guess, as a glowing beacon in the industry to say these are the BPOs out there. I know that we spoke about the risks and the dangers, but equally to Lauren's point, there's lots of great BPOs out there, and a number of them have become now accredited. And when you see that accreditation, please take comfort that BPO has been independently checked and verified. So that would be my first point. My second point is that I guess cybersecurity, I think, you know, you raised the point yourself, is often not thought about like insurance. You know, you kind of think it will never happen to you. In reality, it often does happen, and you know, the ones in the news that you hear, the high profile, aren't the ones that are happening all the time. So please be aware. And the last thing, I guess, is to seek guidance. It's okay not to be an expert on these things. I'm not an expert on these things, and this is why I partner with FinScale to help me.
So very good. Well, look, David, as I said, we could speak all day. Maybe we can have another session for those interested too, and go deeper into the world of GBPO solutions time. But really appreciate your time today. Thank you for joining me. And best of luck and all in South Africa for the next couple of months that you're over there.
Great. I appreciate it. Great to catch up.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.